Welcome to Just One More Podcast. This is episode 8. Had to think about it for a second. This is the first episode of September 3rd. I am Jeff from Just One More Level, and we have John from My Brain on Games.
Hi there.
How are you doing, John?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Well, I am slowly but surely getting better over all of this just congestion and coughing crap that's been going on. But
Yeah, I've been suffering from a runny nose, seemed like the last day or two.
And it just won't quit. It's like the thing that I'm running into is just the sudden shifts between congested and runny nose.
Yeah.
Just very problematic.
It's got to be with the change in weather we had here. Not that it's getting colder per se, but we had the rain that came the last couple of days.
Yeah, some much needed rain to help cool things down a little bit. But with having a little bit more energy, being able to start getting back into routines and stuff, I've got a couple games that I did finally get to mark off as completed, 100% done with.
Okay, I know Ayuden is one of them.
Yeah, and I'll get into that because you and I both have experience with this game, and we've talked about it a couple times over the span of this podcast as I've been trying to get this game completed. But the game that I actually beat before Ayuden Chronicle was Triangle Strategy.
Oh, right, yeah.
Finally got that added to the 100% completed list for 2022.
Oh, you 100% completed? You got 100% completion?
Well, I'm not 100% sure if I did get the 100% completion on Triangle Strategy, but it is complete. It is finished. The story is over. Credits have rolled. It's a solid tactical RPG for anybody that is kind of wanting something in the vein of like Final Fantasy Tactics, but not quite as involved on the combat side of things. It definitely has its grindy moments, but it's not quite as grindy as like the earlier Final Fantasy Tactics games. But yeah, I completed that. Finally got that over. That's I think on the last episode I talked about that one of my most powerful characters ended up bailing on the team going into the final battle. So it was a little the last couple of missions I had to really retool all of my just how I approached combat, because I didn't have that very reliable character that I'd worked so hard on. But yeah, so that is done. Triangle Strategy is complete. It is.
Did it seem like there was a new game plus modes? Because I want to say I remember from coverage of the game, like there's reason to play through it, multiple times.
Yeah, there is multiple endings, and when you complete the game, it does unlock New Game Plus mode, which carries over your characters, their levels, your items, and all the advancement that you had made through your original playthrough.
So then would you just be clobbering your opposition for like most of the game? Or do their levels rise as well?
I don't quite remember. I think essentially, I think the enemies do get stronger, so it kind of keeps the challenge there for even going through the New Game Plus mode. And it also, I think it increases the difficulties of the mock battles, which allow you to grind resources and money and stuff in between story missions. So it does unlock a lot of stuff with that New Game Plus mode, but I was just like, it's a good game. I may go back to it, years down the line, but I was just really ready to kind of be done with it. Because it started kind of dragging on as the chapters went on, and like a good portion of the ending, I would say, is like 60% just having characters talking, like just dialogue and stuff.
Ah, damn! I hate when characters talk in my RPGs.
And well, like it for the most part, like there wasn't a whole lot of combat. Like they would have like one combat sequence, and then
it was just like a lot of story sequences.
Yeah, and at least with my playthrough, the ending there's I think there's three different endings, and the ending that I wanted, it didn't seem like there was any possible way for me to get that ending. So I don't know if it would be easier with a new game plus mode, just going back through, and maybe it opens up more dialogue options. But essentially, at the end of the game, you've got I think there's 7 characters that are all eligible to vote on what they want to do to go into the final battle. 2 of the characters are basically locked into one, and then 2 characters are locked into another, and then you've got 2 other characters that are pretty much locked into that third option. So there's really only one character that you can talk to and potentially get them to vote how you want to go. And none of the dialogue options that I had convinced the character, because I went in with one option. They voted against what I wanted to do, so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna try something. I loaded the save file back up, tried a different dialogue option. The character still voted against what I wanted to do, and I was like, so there really wasn't anything that I could say or do to get the ending that I wanted. So I don't know if that would be different going through the new game plus mode, but I do know that was just kind of a frustrating thing, because it's like,
do you feel their decision was made or maybe influenced by decisions you'd made throughout the course of a game and not something you'd change just like right there at the end?
Well, and that's kind of one thing that I was, well, I don't know, because the characters, pretty much of the 3 people that pitched an idea for what ultimately would be one of the 3 endings, each one has basically a right-hand man that has pretty much voted with them
got a co-sign
throughout the course of the game. Yeah. And so that's pretty much what I was left with. And the main character, your character, does not actually vote in the conviction system that Triangle Strategy uses. So you don't even you don't get to vote on any of these options. You just have to convince other people to vote for whatever option you want to go with. So for the most part, like going into that final decision, it just really felt like nothing I said mattered. Like the game was going to go down a path that it had already predetermined, and for the most part, with the conviction system throughout the game, I really got that vibe that, it very much didn't really seem like my choices or like the information that I had really made all of that. It didn't really seem like I had that much of an impact on how the story developed. And again, I don't know if that changes with New Game Plus, with having all of your items and stuff carry over. I don't know if there's more dialogue things that you can do, because pretty much after like when you're doing all the mock battles, or you're doing just the story missions and stuff, the characters that are on the battlefield, as you're using them and picking up like treasure chests and spoils, and working with your allies to defeat enemies, it's essentially in like the upper right hand corner, a little window would pop up and say that Serenoa's convictions have strengthened, but it never really specifies like with which characters or anything like that. So
so there's probably a lot of stuff in the background as you've played that's maybe influenced the direction these people want to go. Because I mean, it'd be weird for the game to have multiple endings but then you can only see those multiple, and give you the illusion of choice, or choosing which route you want to go down, but then really those options only being available on successive playthroughs.
Yeah, I mean, we're not talking about like Mass Effect 3 or anything. As far as like putting a nice little bow on the story. But like I said, I may end up going back to it and doing the New Game Plus mode sometime later on. But after I completed that, I then finally completed Eowyn Chronicle Rising, and
Huzzah!
I'm still excited for 100 Heroes. I'm still looking forward to 100 Heroes. However, the longer I played Rising, the more disdain I started to get for this game. The story is not very good. It doesn't really get better as it goes on. It has a lot of potential. Like there's a lot of potential with the story, and this is the companion game, so it's not the main thing that they're focusing on.
Yeah, I mean the story is basically like laid out in the first, I don't know, 5 minutes, 30 minutes, something like that. And it's like, okay, and that's the extent of it. And now we're just going to flesh out these, primarily these 3 characters, and write reasons for you to write excuses for you to have all these fetch quests, or to leave the Barrows, to go back to the Barrows, to leave the Barrows, to go back to the Barrows.
And I'm not really a fan of Metroidvania style gameplay.
Blasphemy.
But I would much rather play a Castlevania or a Metroid than play this type of Metroidvania.
Yeah, so first off, I don't know that I'd call this a Metroidvania. Secondly, it's like, I'd rather play a good game than a bad game. It's like, what?
Yeah.
Come on.
But I mean, like when looking at Eowyn Chronicle Rising, and as you're playing it, you take like 1 step forward to then take 5 steps backward, and then you take 3 steps forward to take 1 step backward, and then you take 2 steps forward to take 4 steps backward. Every single time that you get to a new area, like the moment you finally take that 1 step into a new area, they're like, let's go back to town. Why? Why do we need to go back to town when the thing we're here to do is right there? Oh, well, we need to go talk to this person. No, we don't. Nobody in town needs to know anything about what we're doing. Like, we just need to get these missions done.
One of you is the mayor.
Yeah, like, who needs to know what we're doing that is more important than the mayor? Like, I understand that, you're probably wanting to kind of keep your political ties, happy or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on what is the governmental form. Is there a council? It would look not good if the mayor is going behind everybody's back doing stuff. But that doesn't matter.
But I mean, the most that I saw of like a quote unquote council was just the bitchy elders.
Yeah, the old
the old people of the town. That no matter what you did up until like the very end, they were never going to be happy. But so yeah, I finally got through, beat the game, unlocked the hard difficulty, got all the stamps and stuff on the post game play, and just started knocking out the trophies and stuff. But some of the trophies are just like what I referenced before we started actually recording. One of the trophies being get all of the resources, or every type of resource, or something like that. And I was like, I'm really going to have to go through and just find a list online and just start marking off which after I beat the game, I was like, okay, now I can start using a guide. That's perfectly fine. Because just with the way that I play games, I really want my first playthrough to just really be me experiencing the game through just my abilities of playing said game. So after I beat the game, I was like, okay, now I can break out guides, and there are no guides on any of the PlayStation websites. I checked PSN profiles. There was a trophy list, but there was no guides. I went to True Trophies. there was the trophy list, but there was no guides. I went to PlayStationTrophies.org. Again, there was a list of the trophies, but there was no guides. So I ended up using 360 Achievements, that website, to kind of get some help through some of the stuff. But then, even then, there wasn't really helpful guides on some of the stuff. So, like, just scouring the internet just so I can get these stupid trophies.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the
I think whenever I was in your boat, I just used True Achievements, which, and again, with multi-platform games like this, it doesn't matter where you're sourcing the guide from. I think even True Trophies probably said it on the website. It does for True Achievements. Like whenever you look at whenever you look at the guide for an achievement or just an achievement, it also says, hey, and on our sister sites, like here's the PlayStation versions or here's the Xbox versions, and it shows how many guides are on the sister websites and if they have any at all, I guess.
So, but last night I completed the story, unlocked hard mode, and I was like, okay, now I can just go through, start mopping up these trophies. It was like 10 o'clock at night or 11 o'clock at night when I completed the game. So I was like, how much longer is it really going to be for me to get these last, getting all the characters' weapons and armor maxed out, and obtaining the rarest of meat or the highest grade meat, or completing or beating the bosses on hard mode. I was like, how long is it really going to take? And oh my god, like,
how late did you stay up?
I stayed up till 3 a.m.
My gosh.
Not realizing that it was 3 a.m. No, I was off today.
Okay.
So that was part of. I wasn't really paying too much attention to the clock because I was like, I don't work the next day, and I really just want to get this game completely done. So yeah, like I just started to knock out the trophies and stuff, and then
which, I mean, that
I
tracks.
figured.
I think whenever I talked about and gave you my times, I think it was basically an additional 5 hours from the time I beat it to get the rest of the achievements and trophies unlocked.
Yeah, and I mean, for the most part, like, the only real like redeeming quality that I can muster to point out for Rising is at least the combat does evolve as you play. As you like level up the equipment or the weapons and the armor or the gear and stuff, like as you level those up, it adds more combos, or it adds additional floating capabilities or dashes and stuff. But oh my god, like I figured, like, as I wasn't really too concerned about the resources one, because I was like, you know what, I'm going to be going through powering up all these weapons and armor. So I'm pretty sure, like, as I'm doing that, if there's something that I don't have on this list, I'll get it while I'm doing that.
Wrong.
I did not.
Yeah, I did the same thing. And I mean, that's really what you need to do. I mean, okay, work towards this long-term achievement or trophy, and then that collection one, at the very least, if you don't get it, you will have less to collect at that point. And that was true.
Problem that I had was after I got the trophies for powering up all the weapons and armor, and I still didn't have that trophy for the resources. When I started looking through the lists and stuff, I was like, okay, I've got that, and I was just going through, and I was just like, I've got so much of this stuff. But then I saw the like someone, I think it was on 360 Achievements, that website.
I think it's just Xbox Achievements now.
Or yeah, I guess Xbox Achievements. Can't remember if it's .com or .org or whatever.
It used to be x360a.org, and now I think it's xboxachievements.com, but that could be wrong.
But when I was on that website, essentially someone referenced, like, they were like, every box and urn or vase that you break could also drop items that go towards that achievement or that trophy. It also factors in all of the farm items and the pasturage items, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I haven't really bought anything from that except for, like, the Thunderbird eggs for the Inn's hot springs specialty
Yeah,
item.
for special quests. And to be fair, like you said, those are all ones that you just buy from the shop.
Yeah, so I was like, okay, I went over there, bought all those items, still didn't pop. I was like, are you kidding me? But then I saw that someone had referenced that the trapping or the obtain whatever, like that the highest grade meat or whatever also played into that trophy. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't have that one. So I'm going through and I'm trying to get that, just I went to on one of the websites, it said just go to the Great Forest, go to the Hellhound Lake, kill the slime thing that's there, set a trap, fast travel back to the beginning, and just keep doing that until you get it. And at this point, I thought I had upgraded all the tools.
Rip.
And so I did that like 10, 15, 20 times. I'm like, I'm not getting this. Like, this is just... I was like, okay, I'm going to go double check just to make sure I've got the max trap. And sure enough, I didn't. So I was like, oh, okay. So upgraded that, went back to the Great Forest, just kept doing that a couple times. And it just kept saying that you didn't catch anything. You didn't catch anything. You didn't catch anything. So I'm like, okay, this is just... These two trophies are just really, really troublesome. So I was like, okay, I kill the slime, I set the trap, I go all through the entire Great Forest, I beat the boss again. I'm just trying to give it as much time as possible. And then I go back to the front I fast traveled back to the beginning, and the trophy pops. I got the meat thing. I was like, oh, okay, great, that's awesome. The other trophy didn't pop. I was like, why? So yeah, then I just went through and just I don't even remember what the item was, but I went to like the rune barrows and the depths because I was like that's probably the area that I haven't explored the most of. I got 100% on it, but so I'm just going through there and I kill a bunch of things. I go back to town, then the trophy pops for getting the resources. So I was like, I don't even know what the final item was that I was missing. And then after I got that, I beat the final boss on hard mode, popped that trophy, and then the platinum hit, and I was like, okay, deleted.
I don't know if it would have helped you or not, or if you did, but it sounded like whatever you needed was a loot drop. All the enemies dropped items, especially towards the end whenever I was trying to get the same achievement. I equipped some of the accessories that basically just increased the drop rate and increased the quality of the drops. Did you equip either of those to your characters?
Oh yeah.
Okay. I had just I basically had everybody wearing those and stacking those perks.
Yeah.
So like and towards the end, that was helping me raise money too. I didn't really need money per se, but at the same time, I also wasn't hurting for it because of that.
Yeah, and that was another thing. Like, as I was upgrading all the weapons and armor, like, I would have the resources, and then I would be running out of money. I was like, okay, I'm going to the pawn shop, and I'm just selling.
At that point, it's like, okay, I've literally never sold any of this stuff I've collected. And then it's like, oh, I've got stuff that's very expensive. I'll just sell, like, 3 of those, and I'm good on money again.
Yeah, like, all of the ancient stuff that can't use it for anything except sell it, so... but yeah, so I knocked 2 games off of my list to complete. So now I'm trying to decide on what I'm going to play. But
I think last week you were talking about doing the 2 Killzone games you'd started a couple weeks ago. Are those still up for contention, or are you thinking something different?
They're still up for contention. But before getting into that, did you complete any games? I know you had teased like a surprise or potential surprise of a game that you're going to be playing.
Yeah, my surprise game, basically the game I did not mention, or I don't think that you were privy to me thinking about playing, was Donut County. Do you know what Donut County is?
Is it like a business simulator where you're opening up a donut shop?
I need to see who you follow on Twitter to to where you're not aware of what Donut County is. Are you even following gaming stuff on Twitter? What are you doing?
I mean, my Twitter's starting to become more and more just politicized. Like I'm trying not to get involved with too much. Like I try to use Twitter more for gaming because like my Facebook is just nothing but politics at this point, and now it's starting to seep over into Twitter.
Yeah. Well, if I did go back and cull your Twitter ratio, your Twitter followers, I'd have to do that a couple years ago because Donut County came out in 2018, but it's another Game Pass game.
Okay, well.
And like What Remains of Edith Finch and 12 Minutes, it is another Annapurna Interactive published game. So, it's kind of a small, arty indie game like that. This is developed by Ben Esposito. I imagine if you don't know what Donut County is, you're probably not familiar with him, but maybe you're familiar with Neon White, which just came out and has been attracting a lot of positive buzz.
Well, I mean, if...
Are you kidding me?
Sure, sure. Yeah, well,
have you not seen anything about Neon White?
I mean...
Okay, so that's your homework for next week's episode. Don't play it or anything, but at least look it up. Look up Neon White.
Neon White, or
Neon White, like the color. Anyways,
okay, so
Ben Esposito, that was his joint as well, but he's the primary guy behind Donut County. And I did not realize this until afterwards, I think, while I was reading up about the game, but there is another connection to What Remains of Edith Finch besides the publisher, in the fact that he was a designer on What Remains of Edith Finch.
Well,
yeah, so that was
imagine that.
That was unexpected, but so I've wanted to play this game basically since first hearing about it. It was influenced by Katamari Damacy, and my reason for playing it is directly influenced by that because Jenny's been playing. She's been on a Katamari kick, so she's been playing a bunch of Katamari Damacy games. But it was inspired by that game as well as a game jam where one of the inspirations was the Peter Molyneux Twitter account, which again, I'm sure as we've covered your Twitter habits, you're very familiar with the Peter Molyneux Twitter account.
Oh yeah, like it's
Anyways, that was a Twitter account where kind of aping on Peter Molyneux's big ideas. Whenever it came to games, they would just put out ridiculous game ideas. But in this game, you are controlling a hole, and so you're moving this hole around these stages, these three-dimensional stages, and you're sucking things down into it. You're making things fall into the hole you're controlling, and as that happens, the hole gets bigger, so then you can have bigger objects fall into it. And it's got it's just like 2 to 3 hours long. And it has a story with it. There's a bunch of these characters, kind of Animal Crossing style voices, Animal Crossing style anthropomorphized characters mixed in with the real world and like a human character. But pretty funny story, kind of humorous characters. And it's just a good time.
So instead of like a ball rolling around, picking up a bunch of pieces and stuff, you're just a hole that's kind of doing the same. So kind of like Katamari Damacy, but you're just vacuuming things
influenced by Katamari Damacy, not cloning it or anything.
Yeah.
But there is a character. One of the characters is really the one controlling the holes, and so that becomes kind of an issue. That is the issue at discussion in this game. And, well, hey, what happens whenever things go into these holes? Where do the things go? Where do the people go?
So is it, like, do they get eaten by, like, some monster
it's humorous.
or something? Or?
No, I mean, it's a good time.
Okay.
The soundtrack's really cool, too. Soundtrack done by Daniel Kessner, with some tracks by Ben Esposito as well. It's kind of like gives me, like, breezy spring or summertime vibes, just kind of chilling at the beach or something.
Well, speaking of, just kind of following people on Twitter and getting, finding amusing things, I don't know if you follow or know about a Twitter account by the name of Benji Sales.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, he had tweeted yesterday about a game called Immortality.
Yeah, Sam Barlow.
Yeah, and so... for the most part, I just kind of I asked how how it stacks up with like her story. Nobody responded to it, but essentially that's probably going to be another game that we should check out.
Yeah, I know Immortality's come out and it's seemed like it's I guess gotten rave reviews as well as a couple harsh reviews just coming from different perspectives. But I mean, we had a good time with her story. We haven't played Telling Lies. We need to check that out as well, which that's on Game Pass. And then conveniently, Immortality is also on Game Pass.
Yeah, and that's because like you and I remember like we were just because we played it through Steam and or we played her story through Steam and like there were legitimate areas like as we're watching the snippets and stuff, like I would get goosebumps because it's just like, oh my god, what kind of story are we trying to figure out here? Like this, like just everything was just so well executed. And then just trying to find other games that were similar to that, and Telling Lies is something we do need to check out. And but I saw him tweet about Immortality, and I was like, oh, okay, another game that is in that style. So
yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, I think it's also published by Annapurna.
They are just everywhere.
Yeah, it's kind of like it seems like of the big indie publishers, it's like them and Devolver Digital, maybe Team 17. Yeah. I'm sure there's more too.
But yeah, that's so definitely need to check out Immortality, along with Telling Lies. I can't remember. I mean, it was like a couple sessions that we played and then beat, or I guess technically we beat her story.
I don't know that there's an ending per se. It's just like, hey, you have figured it out to the best of your abilities or to your satisfaction.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I played through Donut County, like I said, just 2 or 3 hours, and it was another one where it wasn't too hard to go ahead and complete the achievements too, so I went ahead and knocked those out. Besides that, mainly just been playing Shining Force, been trucking away with that, and I am in the final battles now. I think I've only got I'm in the third to last battle. And it seems like I think from this point, if I'm understanding correctly, it's basically just going to be battle. So right through to the end. So I'll definitely beat it like tomorrow. One thing that happened this week, let me see. I've had a couple epiphanies with the game. These late game sessions. One of them was, I was talking last week about how I waited way too long to promote my units. I was under the impression that I had to wait till level 20 to promote them, but instead it's level 10. And I guess where I got that is in Shining Force 2, they get promoted at level 20. So I think I was just misinterpreting that. But
you're looking too far ahead.
Yeah. But so I really shot myself in the foot by waiting so long to promote the units because the battles I'm in, I'm in like chapter 7 of 8 by the time I realize I can promote units. So now I'm fighting like really tough enemies, and with each new battle, there's like 1 or 2 new enemy types introduced that flies or has a attack range of 3. Whereas a lot of most enemies have an attack range of 1. They got to get right up on you, and then of course you got archers or mages who usually have a range of 2 squares. But now I'm getting some who have a range of 3, and so that that sort of mix of enemies, coupled with the fact that I've started some new class levels up, new classes, and it seems like whenever you make a promotion, yes, you are getting promoted to a better class, a stronger class, but their stats are lessened.
So it's almost like starting over, but there's more potential there.
Yes. So, and that's the thing. There is more potential. So I inadvertently shot myself in the foot by waiting so long, but as a result, it did help me realize, hey, I know how to grind in this game now. So Max, the main character, the protagonist of the game, he has an egress magic spell. Only spell he has.
Yeah.
And whenever you cast egress, it basically whooshes you out of the battle and back to the last town you visited. So then you could revive your units, you could go buy better equipment, or you could promote them if they reach the level again. And so there was maybe 3 hours, 4 hours of this last week that I've played where I was basically just on one battle, just grinding out levels, and very enjoyable. Like, I love crunchy RPGs. I love the grind in a lot of RPGs. If it works out well, and this was very rewarding because of that potential from these level ups. So in those base level classes, whenever I would get a level up, stats would go up randomly. You know, it's not like every level you're going to have attack and defense and HP and MP go up. It'd be like you had HP go up and then you had speed go up. And the amount they go up is also going to be random. And sometimes you get levels where nothing goes up. It's kind of like, well, that's a bummer of a level.
Always great when that happens.
Yeah. Usually they go up, the stats would go up like 1 or 2 points. And I'd be lucky if, like, oh man, one of them went up 3 points. Wow. But with these promoted classes, stats are going up like 4 and 5 points at a time. And sometimes I'm getting into double digits. So I am starting from a weakened position, but it did not take long for these units to really get beefy and just start being able to hold their own.
Well, and that's kind of like in the later stages of triangle strategy where not only did I lose my like one of my most powerful characters going into these like final battles, but then like one of the missions that I had, I was dealing with like 20 enemies that were on horseback that could attack in 3 squares, like forward, backwards, left, and right. So like they could cover a lot of ground, not only in mobility, but also just the fact that they could attack so many squares away from them. And so having to figure that out was you know, kind of like what you were running into of like, you know, 2 or 3 squares with the range of the enemies.
Now, and in triangle strategy, can you like inspect a unit and see their range, at least their range of movement?
So you can't really inspect. I mean, you can kind of see just like the stats of the character or of the enemy units.
So you can't like put the cursor over them like Fire Emblem style and see, okay, they can go up to like 5 spaces in front of them. So I need to go up to like 6 spaces in front of them so we can both move, but they won't attack me first.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, which that's the same in Shining Force, and that's one of the things that kind of makes it hard because unless I'm familiar with the enemies, I don't know what their range is until I start seeing them move, and especially the flying ones. It's like, oh, you can move like 8 spaces. That's a lot.
So the way that the triangle strategy kind of gets around it, essentially when you are when it's like a character's time to move, like they've got blue squares that they can move to, and if they get in range of enemies that can attack them or like move and get into attack range, the squares turn to like a pinkish purple. So there is kind of a way to see. And like if you go in, like if you,
that's when you're moving your character.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's basically saying, hey, we're warning you, somebody can attack this character if you leave them here.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So you can't see the enemy's range, but in an indirect way you can, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, that is helpful.
So, you know, there is that, but of course, like dealing with any game where you're having to take on enemies that are on horseback, and then they've got lances that allow them to attack, 3 squares away from them, poses all kinds of problems.
Well, and one other thing I learned in these last kind of hours of the game, I think I'm like right at 23 hours in the game, and I imagine I probably have like 2 to 3 more depending on how long these last battles last. There's a lot of enemies on the field. I only have like 12 units, and I'm dealing with like 24 enemy units who are also all very strong. Usually takes like 2 attacks, 3 attacks from my units to take them down. So I'm in for a couple more hours, but one of the other things I learned in these last few hours was some items and some equipment I can not only equip, but I can use in battle. So, you equip an item, and I figure, okay, this is like a ring. It's an accessory. It's going to give me some perk. It's going to boost my defense, or it's going to boost my range. Well, it seems like with the accessories, of which there are not many, there's only like 6 I've come across. And with some of the weapons, there are some like special named weapons. They have additional abilities that if I bring up the menu in battle, I can go over to my items, I can select that item and use, and they'll have like special attacks. It's like, wow, one of the rings like heals everybody within a large range. It's like, oh, that could have come in handy in the past. Or, oh, this weapon allows me to use a special attack a couple squares away. Well, that would have been good for this like melee user who can only attack whenever he's right up on the enemy. Well, he could have maybe attacked a turn ahead. And so that's been another enlightening thing to realize late in the game. And there is a downfall to this. You're kind of a con, and it's the fact that as you use them in this manner, they can break. But then that also explains something for me that had not been explained to this point. At the shops, there's an option to repair weapons, and that's always kind of befuddled me because this is not a game with Fire Emblem style weapon durability where you use a weapon once and it has one less use. So I've always wondered, well, what is the repair function for? And it's like, oh, that's what the repair function is for. I get it. Like towards the end of the game, I get it.
Just kind of the various mechanics of the game finally start to click.
Yeah, like everything's coalescing.
So you said you think you probably have just like a couple more hours of Shining Force left?
Yeah. I'm in the third to last battle, so I've got this one. I've got at least 2 more, and like I said, I think those will probably take me a couple hours to get through. And then Shining Force will be done.
And I don't know if not sure if I asked this in the last episode or not, but do you think you'll just dive right into Shining Force 2, or
no?
Do you have anything else like lined up?
Yeah, I mean, I've got other stuff lined up. I've got a backlog a mile long, but
well, I mean, just a few thousand games.
Yeah. No, I will wait to play Shining Force 2. I did pre-order the Sega Genesis Mini 2, and Shining Force 2 is on that package. I have Shining Force 2 in this Sega Genesis Collections compilation, whatever it is, but it does seem like it has some, I don't know. I haven't played the original. I haven't stuck the Shining Force cart into Genesis to see, but it seems like this game has like not a lot, but noticeable like frame rate issues and just unresponsive delays with the controller, like controller input issues. I haven't played the original card again, so I can't say if that's inherent to the game itself or it's like just the emulation in this package, but I figured I'll probably just hold off on playing Shining Force 2 until getting that, and then I can compare, because that is being done by M2, who are like on the top shelf of retro developers emulating old games. So one thing I may do before that, though, Shining Force was remade for the Game Boy Advance, and in that
to possibly check it out there.
Yeah, in that remake they have actually additional battles, additional characters, and I think they have an additional storyline even, as well as some just some cleanup, some expansions to the story, other stuff like that. So it seems like it would not be just a direct port of the first game. It's actually an expanded version as a remake. I had downloaded that to my SNES Classic after emulating that and putting some Game Boy Advance games on there. Like Jenny played the Metroid Game Boy Advance games. I loaded some RPGs there, and this was one of them. So I may not dive right into that, but I may do that before jumping into Shining Force 2 just to get another chance at Shining Force with some of the knowledge I have now. Because it is, again, I really love the grind. I really love like the crunchy, like actual combat and gameplay of RPGs. So I've had a really good time with it. It's a 30-year-old game, so I mean the story's kind of whatever. But the game itself is really solid. Like, it's easy to see how they were able to build a foundation of strategy RPGs with this game.
Well, and one thing that just came to light for me as I finally decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna get back into working on my video game collection database, which was spearheaded by you, and then I started putting things together, and just the realization that I have Sega Genesis classics on the Xbox One. I was like, oh man, I could check out some of these games as well. So as far as just kind of where, like, I've got a couple of possible games that I'll dive into before Star Ocean: The Divine Force comes out next month. But I've been I was like, well, I can check out various games through the Sega Genesis classics on Xbox, or Killzone Mercenary, or Killzone Shadowfall, or I could possibly decide to finish Yakuza Like a Dragon. And so yeah, I haven't quite. I mean, well,
The world is your oyster.
yeah. Now that I'm starting to finally get some games completed, I'm like, okay, well now I'm starting to get kind of like an open plate, and I'm like, oh, okay, well what do I want to sink some time into? But yeah, that's. I know with the Killzone games, those will be much shorter, so I could most likely knock both of those out, and then still complete Yakuza Like a Dragon before Star Ocean releases next month. But but yeah, I just haven't really decided yet. Like I'm just kind of like I said, just as I have
You're just
started
enjoying
knocking,
yourself. You're single and ready to mingle.
yeah. Yeah, that's I don't have any video game commitments now. That's Triangle Strategy is completed, Aeoden Chronicle Rising is completed, Elden Ring is done. My health is slowly coming back, so like, but yeah, I'm not really sure what I want to quite settle down with next, but
Well, for my part, I think with Shining Force, looks like wrapping up in the next like session or 2 sessions I play it. I think I will finally jump into Sonic Generations. I know I mentioned that last week,
right.
so I'm interested. I started
good Sonic game.
Yeah, I'm started looking at the trophy or the achievements trophies for it, kind of figuring out, okay, am I going to go for all of them? If I'm going to, if I'm not going to, what am I going to go for? And kind of getting a layout of how the game is structured. And it looks like it's, well, if I was going for all the achievements, I think it's like 20 to 25 hours long. I'm sure the game's only like 10 or so. But, we played a little bit of it. It looks like it is true to the name, like Sonic Generations. It focuses on, 3 separate eras of the Sonic games, basically the kind of classic 2D style, the classic Dreamcast style, and then the modern style, more like the Sonic 2006 or Sonic Unleashed, kind of like the 360 PS3 era. So I'm interested to basically start fresh in that game and see all this stuff again for the first time. And, we only played like an hour or two, so we didn't see a lot, and see all of it for the first time.
Yeah. But it had a really good impression.
Yeah.
Like that little bit that we played. Like it definitely had a really good impression left. Especially with just kind of the more mediocre releases before.
Yeah, and I guess it has some online
Generations
components too. Looking at the achievement guide, there are 3 online achievements, and the online's still active.
Is it even possible?
Yeah, the online's still
is?
active, and it doesn't look like it's. I don't think it's versus multiplayer or cooperative multiplayer or anything. I think it's really just like time trial sort of things. But that was one thing that surprised me whenever I was looking at the guide. I was like, wait a minute, online achievements for what?
So the online servers for Sonic Generations still functioning, but Killzone Mercenary and Killzone Shadowfall, those servers had to go offline. Like, what? That just...
Hey, there's some... hey, kudos to... let's see. Here's a new section. Kudos. Weekly kudos. I've got 2 weekly kudos to give out. First one.
All right.
Weekly kudos.
We can add that.
Who published Jump Force? That was Namco Bandai, right?
Yes.
I think it was Namco Bandai. Jump Force. Servers went off. No, servers did not go offline, but the game was delisted from sale a couple months ago, and servers are going to go offline soon. kudos to Namco Bandai. They have reworked some or all of the online achievements where they are still attainable from a single player perspective.
Oh,
And so this is where you can insert the clapping soundbite. Kudos.
No, all right. Well, yeah. That's. I mean, it's nice when a developer / publisher, thinks of the gamers.
Yeah.
Thinks of the people playing the game.
Yeah. So in that case, I don't. I'm sure maybe it's happened. I'm sure it's happened. I've not been following achievements and trophies as close as I have been recently since like 2013 or 2010 or something.
Yeah.
So maybe it's happened before, but hey, good job. And then the second kudos is going to go out to Ubisoft. So Ubisoft,
what?
Yeah, Ubisoft is killing the servers for some Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 era titles, a number of Assassin's Creed games, Splinter Cell Blacklist, and Driver Parallel Lines. Well, the servers were set to shut down on September 1st. They've extended the shutdown 1 month.
Oh, okay.
Hey,
I mean,
it's better than nothing.
That's something.
Yeah. I mean,
that's something.
Yeah, like reading the story on True Achievements, it's like, those weren't games. I'm interested in like all of them, not to the point where I'm actually going to like pick them up and be like, oh, well, I'm going to get these achievements before I can't. But reading some of the comments on there from people who are like, well, I wasn't planning on going for the achievements in like this one Assassin's Creed game, but I guess I can now. But still, just seeing stuff like that, where online achievements are being made available offline, or hey, we said we're going to shut down the server, we're going to extend it a little bit. Hey, kudos. Thank you. Kudos.
Well. Let's see if so if we're doing this new kudos.
The weekly kudos
segment. I would probably So I'll throw one out there too. The kudos to Microsoft for working out an agreement or a deal with PlayStation for Call of Duty. Kind of trying to, granted, the agreement is only going to allow Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for, they say several more years, but who really knows? I mean, that's not really a number. But, trying to, at least in the short term, it's just a business decision, I get it, but to kind of try to bury some of that console war, just bury the hatchet temporarily. Try to calm the embers of the fanboys out there. So kudos to Microsoft for working out that deal, keeping Call of Duty multi-platform at least for the foreseeable future.
Kudos to Microsoft to sign in a contract that guarantees them more money. Kudos to you.
Yeah, and really, like I guess when you look at it, once Call of Duty starts hitting Game Pass, I'm sure that's going to start pulling players away from PlayStation and to the Xbox ecosystem to just play Call of Duty through Game Pass. So probably by the time that this generation is over, that's when Microsoft will be like, okay, well now we don't really need to have this contract where we're putting Call of Duty on PlayStation, because now we don't have as many people playing Call of Duty on PlayStation as at the beginning of the generation. But still kudos to Microsoft for kind of trying to quell some of those embers a little bit, and I'll try to have a better kudos next week.
Well,
but
yeah, I mean, I didn't plan it out. It's just as we were talking about the Sonic Generations online, it's like, oh wait a minute, I remember seeing that, and oh yeah, that reminds me of the Jump Force thing too. But yeah, so I'll probably be diving into Sonic Generations this coming week, and then beyond that, I kind of like the pace I've had where I've been playing like one, mainlining one game, which I'm always like mainlining a game, but it is nice to have smaller side games in the in between sections, and even as I found here lately, like going concurrently with like What Remains of Edith Finch or Donut County, these short little games that only take a couple hours. Be like, okay, well I'm going to take like a 1 or 2 day break from whatever I'm mainlining. I'm going to play that. So I think this next week I may do the same. I may fire up another indie game from Game Pass, another like short little game, and be like, okay, I'm going to play Shining Force. I'm going to beat that. then I'll probably play another small, little short indie game, enjoy that, and then pop into Sonic Generations.
Well, ever since we, got our freedom from Elden Ring, we've started to have a lot of games to talk about.
Yeah. And
not,
that's another thing.
we,
Like playing these short little indie games, it is, again, something like, hey, I beat something. I can bring something to the show this week.
yeah. Yeah, and instead of just more like Elden Ring talk, which Elden Ring was great. Like it's a phenomenal game, and it has to go up against God of War Ragnarok, but I really think that Elden Ring's probably going to, just with the amount of time that people have sunk into Elden Ring. I think Elden Ring is going to be the game of the year for 2022.
Oh yeah, I said it half-heartedly, kind of facetiously, but totally meaning it. Elden Ring is one of mankind's greatest achievements. Like, that's a flamboyant, that's a ludicrous statement at face value, but I really mean it. It is up there with the moon landing.
Like I just watched a video from XPlay earlier today, where they really harped on open world games, and it's very true. Like, games were always aiming for that open world premise, just a sandbox for the player to be able to play around in. But really, like, as companies have gone towards more open world games, they get more and more just empty and barren, and just or like with Mass Effect,
or formulaic, like Ubisoft. Ubisoft has a template for online or for open world games. It's like, okay, Far Cry, the open world Assassin's Creeds. They're what is the tech?
Watch Dogs.
Yeah, Watch Dogs. It's like, okay, we've got a big open world. Go climb a tower or something, and now you have more access to the map. And hey, all these things popped up.
Yeah. And it's just like with the announcement with Starfield, that there's going to be 1,000 planets that you can go and explore. I don't want to do that. Like, it's cool that you're making this like massive world to explore, but like, Bethesda's not exactly known for having a very well fleshed out, fully functioning world. There's a lot of redundant things in Elder Scrolls and Fallout.
Yeah, it's like Elden Ring. It's got to be authored content. It's got to be original stuff.
And that's the thing that just really blew me away with Elden Ring, is like, you can explore wherever you want to explore in that map. Now, you may come across things that are going to kill you. Well, you will. There's no may. You will. You will come across things that will kill you. But you can go anywhere. You can traverse that map either above land or underground. Like, you can explore, and there is not a lot of stuff that's repetitive. Like, yeah, there's a couple like mini bosses that are a little repetitive as far as just kind of like their patterns or their attacks or whatever. But like, the actual bosses are so freaking just unique, and just very well, in most cases, like, majestic. I would say, like, just the grandiose nature of the bosses. Whereas, like, you and I have talked about Final Fantasy 15. Like, yeah, it has a open world map. You can explore and go around and do. you can travel. There's not much you can actually do in the world, but it's technically open world. And that's just kind of the thing with, like, Elder Scrolls and Fallout, and so like, what they accomplished with Elden Ring was just phenomenal. So God of War Ragnarok could very well be just another masterpiece, but I think it's kind of like a catch-22, or like a double-edged sword. Like, God of War had kind of started to temper off a little bit. Like,
have you beat the PlayStation 4 God of War?
Not yet.
Okay, so just bear that in mind whenever you hear Jeff talk.
Yeah. So But for the most part, like, the original trilogy or the two games that were on the PSP, like those, like God of War 1 through 3, amazing games. The PSP games, like Ghost of Sparta was really good, or Chains of Olympus was really good. Ghost of Sparta was just fantastic. But then like God of War Ascension, you could really start seeing that, okay, well, they're starting to kind of lose their ways, so to speak. Like it was still a good game,
I mean, and
but
that's what happens whenever you create a trilogy and then you're done with the trilogy. It's like, okay, well, do we do
yeah,
something new? Or in that case, they were kind of the console manufacturers were going long in the tooth for that current console generation. It was the same thing
yeah,
with
yeah.
Gears of War, and then, hey, Gears of War 3 is come and went, and we still don't have the next generation of consoles yet. Let's throw out Gears of War
We need something.
Judgment.
Yeah, which I don't know what the popular opinion is, but I would say that Gears of War Judgment was a better like fourth installment of Gears of War than God of War Ascension was for God of War. Like, I think Judgment did better for that franchise than Ascension did for the God of War franchise.
Yeah. Now, on the other hand, I've never really played a lot of the original God of War series until the PlayStation 4 entry, which I think is one of the best PlayStation 4 games, bar none. And so I'm really looking forward to Ragnarok. I won't play it right away just because it is a cross-gen title. It's not going to be on the PS4, PS5, so I want the best experience. It's the same thing with Gran Turismo 7. Whenever that came out, it's like, okay, well, I have a PS4. I could totally play this. I don't have the PS5, though, so I'm not going to have the best version, the best experience. So I'm just going to go back and play Gran Turismo 6 on my PS3. No. So, I mean, Ragnarok, whenever I get a PS5, it'll be one of the first games I get, but it had the, like every game this year has the, if you're only looking at it from the perspective of, oh, well, it's going to be the game of the year, like a consensus game of the year winner. It's like, that's a bad way to look at it. I mean, what do you feel about the game? Just because Elden Ring is going to be like the consensus victor doesn't mean that, something smaller could be your game of the year. But if you are looking at that consensus view, it's like, well, every game that releases this year has the unfortunate release being the same year as Elden Ring, because that game's gonna win.
Yeah, like, but yeah, I mean, it despite some of the delays and stuff that pushed a couple big titles into 2023. Like 2022 has been a phenomenal year for new game releases. Like, this has been such a great year. Like, for the most part, like, there's still God of War Ragnarok coming out. There's still the new or the next generation of Pokemon that's coming out. Like, Square Enix is, like, just the fact that they're supporting more than just Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest is just awesome. Dalefield Chronicle comes out this month. Star Ocean, the Divine Force comes out next month. They've got the Final Fantasy VII Reunion, or Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion coming out later. So yeah, like the fact that Square Enix is doing more than just and then just the fact that they had Triangle Strategy earlier this year, and Valkyrie Elysium, which I think also comes out this month.
Harvestella, does that come out this year?
Yeah, I mean, Square, I think that's October or November.
Square Enix, there's a lot of stuff we could list.
Yeah, so it's nice to see them finally doing things that are not just Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest. But yeah, like, this has just been a really, really good year. And the fact that Elden Ring came out in February and, like, just didn't allow people to talk about anything else for so many months is just really impressive. But yeah, that's I think if I'm going to, like, settle in on an actual game that I'm going to dive into next, I am kind of leaning more towards Killzone Shadowfall, just because I think that's probably going to be like a 5 to 10 hour experience. Just get another short game completed. Since I'm not putting hundreds of hours into Elden Ring, it's been nice to just knock out some shorter games. So, but I think that's probably a pretty good Um, Oh, one thing that I did want to point out, since there's still going to be, if by the time that this episode goes up, still a few weeks for people to check out the Kickstarter for the Armed Fantasia and Pennywise dual Kickstarter. Finally got my situation all sorted out and figured out. So back to that project. Looking forward to seeing more of those games, and hopefully other RPG creators from years ago will start to turn more towards Kickstarter. With Eowyn Chronicle, the spiritual successor to Suikoden, and then Armed Fantasia being the spiritual successor to Wild Arms, and Pennywise being the spiritual successor to Shadow Hearts. Like, not going to go through like a list of games that I would like to see
Here's
spiritual
Jeff
successors
with his
to.
lists again. First it was Square Enix, now it's games he wants spiritual successors to.
But I won't go into any lists like that. But I am like, I don't. Have you seen a Kickstarter where it's like two games in one, or like two projects in one? Like, this is the first time I think I've seen a dual Kickstarter. Like, have you seen anything else like that?
I'm not the authority on it, so I wouldn't know. But no, I have not seen anything else like this.
It's just kind of a cool concept of sorts. Like,
yeah, I've seen some criticism of it, and that it's a pretty clear indication of where their publisher or where their publishing partners feel RPGs are. It's like, well,
yeah,
instead of doing individual Kickstarters, let's go ahead and lump these two together. And it makes sense. It's just like you and me. Like, we're both fans of Wild Arms and Shadow Hearts, so of course we would want this to succeed.
Yeah.
And even if they were individual, it's like, well, we are, again, both the type of people who would have contributed to both. But,
yeah,
maybe to get more people, maybe less diehard people to kick in, it's like, well, hey, we're going to bundle two of them together. Let's try and get as many eyes on this as possible. Maybe somebody's more of a fan of Shadow Hearts than Wild Arms. They don't really like Wild Arms, but they're going to back it anyways. And there's tiers in there for like, hey, I just want this game, or I just want that game. But it seems like I've not done research into this. I'm just kind of speaking out my ass here, but it seems like any more Kickstarters for these like spiritual successors or these big games are really just, hey, there is a publisher. We've already got interested parties, or we already have a publishing partner. This is just to help gauge the interest and really see how much money they are going to give us. Yes, all the money you contribute is going to go to the development of the game, or help in it in some way. But the amount of money these folks are getting from Kickstarter is not a sufficient budget to develop the sort of games that at least probably a lot of the people think they're going to get. Which I'm fine. I don't know anything about game development personally, but I would think like, okay, I'd be fine just with a PS2 looking spiritual successor to Wild Arms or Shadow Hearts, and I'm sure that would not cost as much. But then again, it probably would cost more, because at that point you're having to deal with this archaic technologies. Well, no, I guess you'd still probably use modern game engines, and at that case, it's probably not any more expensive to use the high-res assets or better looking assets, because you're just creating the assets in the engine. It would just be how much detail, how many objects, stuff like that. It's like, hey, if we can just make linear, simple style games, not linear, not simple per se, but just kind of retro, I guess, PlayStation 2 era RPGs. They don't have to, not every RPG has to be a sprawling open world Final Fantasy 15 sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, I think with Eowyn Chronicle 100 Heroes, I think when that Kickstarter started, or that campaign started, I don't think they had a publisher at that point. And I think it was like maybe a month or two after the Kickstarter completed that they announced that 505 Games like picked them up as a publisher.
And see, that very well could have been a thing like, hey, we will publish your game if you meet a certain metric on Kickstarter, we want to know there's enough
Yeah.
interest there to make sure this is going to be a mutually beneficial relationship.
Yeah, and that's just looking at the Kickstarter page for Armed Fantasia and Penny Blood. Like they've got 26 days left to go, and they've already got over 9,000 backers.
How much money?
Right now, they are just shy of $1.2 million. And I think, yeah, it looks like they're requesting $713,000, which, if you divide that between two, I mean, that's not. I mean, it for people, I mean, that's a good chunk of money. But for developing a game,
Yeah, like how many people are on the
Yeah.
team? I think one of the things that
Yeah.
has stuck with me, and kind of one of the things that makes me, whenever I see these Kickstarters, think of is, I think it was Jason Schreier's first book, and there was someone he talked to in there that said, okay, with Kickstarter, you got to think, if you're operating a team of X number of individuals, you're going to have to pay them this much. You're going to have to give them insurance. They're going to have some sort of benefits. You're basically going to have a budget of this much per month. The Kickstarter money we got is enough for like 6 months of game development. It takes 2 years to make a game. Like, where does the rest of that money come from?
Yeah, and it definitely it's definitely a situation where it does seem like Kickstarter is kind of becoming the kind of advertising for these smaller teams or pseudo smaller teams to pitch to publishers to be like, well, hey, we got for Eowyn Chronicle 100 Heroes, we had 40,000 people who backed the project. For Armed Fantasia and Pennywise, they've got, or Penny Blood, they've got over 9,000 people with 26 days left to go. So it's very much just like, selling advertising space. It's like, hey, our radio station goes out to X number of people, so you should advertise with our radio station because it's going to be, heard by, X amount of people. So it does seem like Kickstarter is becoming that platform for these, indie developers or smaller studios or people that are just trying to get back into game development, to be able to say, hey, yeah, we've got thousands of people who are interested in this game, and if we can make this happen, then pick up a few more thousand or 10,000 or 20,000 more people.
Yeah, because I mean, if you could extrapolate and say, okay, well, if there's 40,000 diehard people who would be interested enough in this game to donate their own money to it, how many does a publisher think they're going to sell to the general audience, the general gaming audience across the world? Because again, Kickstarter's a world, I think you can contribute from anywhere in the world as long as the protocols are in place. You can do it through your country or through VPN. So okay, well, 40,000 is not a lot of people for a game to sell per se. So then, like, okay, if we have a team of 20, 30 people making this game, we think we're going to sell, let's say, 100,000. That's going to dictate what the budget for that game is.
Yeah. Well, and like in the case of Eowyn Chronicle, with 100 Heroes, the fact that it's going to be on Game Pass, like,
yeah, I mean, that's how I played the Eowyn, Chronicles Rising.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and so
I was out. I mean, discounting the fact that I ostensibly am paying for Game Pass Ultimate by buying I'm paying for Game Pass Ultimate. I'm paying for it. But in my mind, it's like, hey, I paid $0 to play that game.
Well, and I'm curious as to it's obviously not talked about. Microsoft doesn't talk about like the payouts to these developers or publishers about games that go on Game Pass. Like, I think Square Enix at one point let slip in regards to, I think, Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, it was a couple $1 million to get Guardians of the Galaxy on Game Pass. But that's just one example,
and probably like more of a large tentpole release versus like Eowyn Chronicles. Yeah.
So I'm curious to see, because with like Eowyn Chronicle Rising and 100 Heroes going to be on Game Pass day one. I'm curious as to like what those payouts are in regards to getting games on Game Pass, because like you know, obviously there's money involved, but like how much money
Mm-hmm.
is involved.
Yeah, the
And
developer,
of course,
publisher, they're getting some money. There's probably going to be some sort of co-marketing that goes on that Microsoft says, hey, we'll fund some marketing for this because we want to hype up Game Pass, but we will do so
yeah,
using your game. And, if they can, I'm sure they go to the developers and publishers and say, hey, make DLC for your game, make consumable items or something for your game. So even though you're not getting that initial sale from the customer, you could still get some knock-on sales.
yeah. Um, so yeah, like it's definitely something where, you know, like I feel like if just tossing this out there, if Hironobu Sakaguchi from Mistwalker wants to do a new game, he could very easily just go to Kickstarter, and he's probably going to pick up a couple thousand backers to support a, maybe a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy, or spiritual successor to Lost Odyssey, or
Another
Blue
one?
Dragon or something.
How many of those has he
Yeah,
made?
well, I mean, he's got a knack for it, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's chummy with Square again, so he may just be able to make another Final Fantasy. Like, hey,
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
that'd be a good marketing thing, and that'd be a big thing for Square, and of course for him. Like, hey, he's coming home for one more game. This is Sakaguchi's last game, and it's going to be the next entry in
Yep.
Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy 17. He's back at the helm of a game that has a 7 in it. So it's got to be good, right? It's got to be good. But yeah, like he, just kind of tossing it out there. Like he could go to Kickstarter and just put a Kickstarter campaign together, get a couple thousand people, and probably pick up another publisher that would be willing to work with him on a new game. But
Which, I mean,
so like
he put out Fantasian. That's an Apple Arcade exclusive. So I mean, he's getting, his studio's getting some money from Apple, something from him.
yeah, through the Apple Arcade subscription service. And that's another thing. I kind of wanted to just like how much money like residual money that he's getting from that. But
Yeah, and I wonder,
it's
like, I don't know if there's an exclusivity with Apple Arcade releases and how long it is. I know some games, obviously there's not. There may be a short-term exclusivity because some games that have appeared on Apple Arcade have since appeared on other platforms. But I'd love to play Fantasian. I just don't. I mean, I guess Jenny has an iPad. I've thought about that, but we don't have an Apple Arcade subscription. I just get it for 1 month or whatnot and check it out.
well, from the little bit that I played, like it's really good.
It looks gorgeous.
Like I love the art style. The soundtrack was really cool. The way that the combat works seems to fit a touchscreen more than a controller, but you can use like a DualShock 4 or an Xbox controller through Bluetooth with an Apple TV, which is how I played the little bit that I did. But I mean, it's a good game. I think for me, like I was playing it, and the way that it was released was in chunks. So like the first chunk was relatively small, and then there was like a fall update that was like the rest of the game. So I think there's definitely something in the works with Apple to try to keep people paying for Apple Arcade, kind of like in an episodic type of structure.
Yeah, instead of being like, okay, well, I paid the $8 this month. I experienced all I want. Now I'm going to go ahead and cancel.
Yeah. So the update that happened fall of last year added like 40 hours of content to the story, and like I mean there's no microtransactions involved, there's no gotcha mechanics. Like it
Correct,
is
and that is something with Apple Arcade releases. Apple Arcade releases just is the game. They are the game. There are no microtransactions.
So, and it was just really nice to have like a well fleshed out RPG that definitely fits more of like a mobile sense. But like I said, I played it on the TV and it was fine. But like so many mobile games just rely so heavily on microtransactions and gotcha mechanics, and just trying to find ways to milk money out of people. So like playing Fantasian and not having all that stuff, it was like, this is good. This is this makes me hopeful that Apple Arcade could be a viable option, and hopefully, like Google has attempted stuff like the Play Pass or whatever to get rid of gotcha mechanics or microtransactions and DLC and stuff. For like, if you pay for the Play Pass, then it eliminates all that stuff from the game, and you just get the full game. But it's not as just clear cut as Apple Arcade is. So, but that tangent aside, I think for the most part this is a pretty good stopping point. Don't you think?
Yeah.
So, I'm probably going to play Killzone Shadowfall. Hopefully, you'll have Shining Force to talk about as a completed game on the next episode.
Yeah, barring some exception, some unforeseen accident or something happened, I should have one, maybe even two completed games to talk about, and maybe another one in the mix to discuss as well.
All right. Well, this was, or is, not was, this is episode 8 of Just One More Podcast, which is available on 4 different platforms now, with Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. And we will see you, or well, you'll hear from us with episode 9 very soon. So, see you, everybody.
Bye-bye.